Hola a todo el mundo, soy Laura y este es mi canal en YouTube Idiomas con Laura y hoy vamos a hablar de las idiomas románticas, mi experiencia con estos y también qué quería hacer si necesitaría aprender esos idiomas una otra vez. Hi everyone, my name is Laura and this is my YouTube channel Languages with Laura, and today we are going to talk about Romance languages and my experience with them and what I would have to do if I had to learn them over again. So for some context, I speak Spanish, and then I also speak French, and those are both Romance languages. There are other Romance languages such as like Italian and Portuguese that I'm not familiar with, but the first languages that I ever learned outside of learning my native language as a baby, English, were Spanish and then French. And in my school system, we were required to learn Spanish starting in first grade, and then I was required to take it all the way up until high school. So that was 8 years of Spanish, and then I decided to take Spanish and French in high school. And like I said, those were the first languages that I ever learned. And so because of this, I did not have a lot of choice in the direction or methods that I had to learn these languages. And I also just didn't know how to learn languages, what strategies worked best for me as an individual, and I didn't really have the freedom to figure that out then because I was learning through school. I had to get the homework done and I had to do the proper exercises and get ready for the quizzes and the tests and everything like that. So I just didn't have a lot of learning freedom. But then since not even going to university and studying both of these languages in university, it's actually only been through learning languages outside of school that have allowed me to explore the best ways for me to learn languages. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how these languages work, the similarities that they have, and then what I would do if I had to learn them from scratch over again. And so some of it is because I feel like I didn't learn something super well, or it took me a long time to realize something that would have been much easier if I had done it a different way the first time. So it's very interesting, and I would love to do this sort of video with other languages because I have learned languages in other language families, but because my history with these is the longest and the strongest, I thought I would get started with this. So the first thing, obviously, is grammar. Really, the thing is with these Romance languages is that you have so many different verb conjugations, and that's really kind of your bread and butter for the language. Like, yes, vocab is obviously important, but if you're studying multiple Romance languages, vocab isn't always the hardest because there are a lot of similar words that make it really easy. And even if you're coming from like an English speaker or a French speaker, like anything that ends in T-I-O-N, it's gonna be the same, but just slightly tweaked in each language. So like organization in English, organisation, organisation. Like it's very similar, it's those endings. So it's actually really easy to find patterns like that between languages. Even though English is not a Romance language, it's a Germanic language. It got a lot of influences from France back when Normandy happened, because all the French aristocrats came to England and they increased English's vocabulary. They more than doubled English's vocabulary, but it was with a lot of more fancier upper class words. So a lot of words that we use today in English are influenced from French, are from the Romance language, even though it is still technically classified as a Germanic language because it came from the Anglo-Saxons, from kind of that northern Germany, Denmark area. But anyway, because of that, there are a lot of similarities there, and I really wish that somebody had just told me, like, hey, for Spanish, if you have a word in English that ends in T-I-O-N, In Spanish, it's going to be C-I-O-N, with a little accent. Because right there, my vocab just increased significantly. And I know there are other examples like that with Spanish and English, and then that also correlates to French, and I would assume Italian and Portuguese as well. So like just those little shortcuts that would have just helped me know words so much faster and be so much more comfortable with them. Because yeah, not knowing the word for like organization, but trying to talk about myself in an interview or some like that's a good word to have. Like it's a longer word. It's good for your vocabulary to be more robust. And for it to be so simple as organización, like that's not a word I needed to memorize. That's a word that I just needed to know. But anyway, let's bounce back to the grammar. So like I said, there are so many different ways to conjugate a verb, just not even just with all the different subjects, knowing I, you, he, she, it, we, you, plural or formal, and then they, which also, by the way, with Spanish specifically, we didn't learn like any sort of like formal or plural you, because like what I was taught was usted, which was categorized under the he, she category of conjugation, just because it was the same conjugation, even though it was like formal you. But then ustedes was also categorized under the ellos, ellas category, because it, again, was the same conjugation, even though it was the plural formal you. But that's not how it was written in any of our conjugation charts. We also never learned vosotros, vos, any of those other words for plural or formal you in some of the other Spanish dialects, for like vosotros in the Spain dialect or vos in the Argentinian dialect, possibly others. I wouldn't know because I never learned them. And then all of a sudden I get to college and one of my professors, like from Spain, he's like, vosotros estáis, and I'm like, what is that? So just having that exposure would have been nice earlier on, but I also don't ever use it anyway. I still stick with usted and ustedes, and I am perfectly okay with that. But having that freedom to choose kind of almost your dialect would have been really nice, but I also understand how something like that would have been difficult in a school setting, because if you have one kid who wants to learn like Spain Spanish, but then another kid who wants to learn like Mexican Spanish, and this other kid who's like, I want to learn Peruvian Spanish. Like, I get that's not plausible in a school setting, but if I had to learn Spanish on my own over again, I would have just sat down and said, I'm gonna learn the Colombian accent. I'm gonna learn the Colombian version dialect. Bubble. Like, that's what I would do. Is I would be a little more specific from the beginning, because my first Spanish teacher was from Mexico. My elementary school Spanish teacher was from Mexico. My middle school Spanish teacher was from Puerto Rico. My high school Spanish teachers were mostly American, and then my college professors are like mostly Spain. I had one American, but he also was like focused on Spain Spanish. And so because of that, my accent is like, I refuse to do any sort of Spain Spanish though. Like, it is just too late. I don't like saying corazón. I prefer saying corazón. Like, those pronunciation differences, and again, having not learned vosotros, I just feel too far behind in my Spanish. I would have loved to just start with like, I'm gonna learn Colombian Spanish, and then just done that. The other thing with conjugation, I feel like every time I start talking about conjugation, then I go off on a different tangent. Great. Anyway, I wish that I had organized the conjugation notes better, because my teachers did a great job teaching me. I understand the differences between all of the conjugations, and they had a great job and used great resources to help me learn. But I am a big picture kind of person. I need to see next to each other all the different conjugations so that I can see if I want to say something in the past like this, I choose that one, in the future is that. Just having it all laid out in front of me so I can understand everything that I need to learn, even if I hadn't learned it yet. Just knowing that there is an end to when there are no more conjugations that I need to learn. That would have been nice, because it seemed never ending. You know, it was like, oh, now we're learning a new one. And I was like, wait, I thought I learned everything, you know? Like, I remember when they were teaching us the conditional for the first time, and we never really learned conditional in English because it's just one of those things that we picked up as kids, you know? So I had learned, you know, both past tenses, the present tense, the future tense. And then when we got into moods, like conditional and subjunctive, I was like, there's more? There is more that I have to learn? So just having like an end goal of like, yeah, once you learn all the tenses and then all the moods and all the moods in each tense, then you're good. That would have just been really nice to know. I just like knowing where the ending is. And I like seeing the big picture, what everything is. And then I feel like I can properly devote energy to each category and I won't feel discouraged. And I can just say, okay, today I'm gonna focus on the conditional, or this week we're gonna focus on all the subjunctive tenses and we're gonna just relax and have fun with it. It would have been so much more fun and less stressful if I could just know how to devote my energy. But some of the strategies that my teachers used were amazing. Like, I remember my French teacher, she had us draw the little conjugation T-charts, which I love those. I know some people hate them. I personally love them. So that is one takeaway from school that I'm happy about. But she would have it where we would have one T-chart with the subjects and then one T-chart with verbs. And then we had two die, or one die and you roll it twice. Once to choose your subject and then roll it again to choose the verb. And then you had to conjugate the subject and that verb as just practice, or like even create a sentence out of it. And this was great because we got to practice differences between ER, RE, and IR verbs, or like verbs that have stem changes in them. There are just so many different ways that you can tweak this very simple dice game. If you don't have dice, you can just go online and use a dice generator and just click a little button and it'll roll it for you. That way it's still completely random. So that was one game that I really liked. The final thing that I would do differently if I had to learn Spanish over again from scratch, same with French, and if I do pick up another Romance language, like if I were to pick up Portuguese or Italian, then I would focus so much more on real world context and like slang, idioms, phrases, things like that. Because I feel like with a lot of these Romance languages, there's like a formal way to say it, and then there is the colloquial way to say it. There's the way that native speakers actually say it, which is so different than what we learned in schools, because in school we're learning the academic version of the language, which, you know, is great for like translators who work in academic fields or medical or law, something like that. It makes perfect sense. But if you're just talking, wanting to communicate with people, putting more effort into watching TV shows, listening to music, just some way of getting native speaker conversations, because even with my native speaker teachers, I feel like I didn't learn any casual conversation because it was an academic setting. We weren't going to learn that. So if I had to start over, I would do so much more just watching of television shows, movies, listening to music, podcasts, so that as I'm learning words, I'm learning how they're actually used by native speakers in daily conversations. So that would be something I would strongly recommend if you are going to learn a Romance language for the first time, is really expose yourself to native speakers as much as you can, more than just the strict academic way of doing things. Gracias a todos para escucharme en este video sobre las idiomas románticas. Creo que te gustaría este video, y si te gusta, poner un thumbs up. Crap, I don't know how to say thumbs up in Spanish. O decir algo en los comentarios para hablar conmigo. Y si te gustan los videos como eso de idiomas y estudiar, por favor, subscribe. I don't know. But there we go. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much for listening. Leave comments down below with your strategies for learning Romance languages if you have or if you want to, which ones you would like to learn. If you like language learning and travel content like this, be sure to hit the subscribe button. I post a video every week, más o menos cada semana. I try. And yeah, if you like it, thumbs up, comment. I also have other social media linked down below that you can follow me there. And until I see you all in the next video, hasta luego, muchas gracias y adiós.